At the White House, they are genuinely upset by today's news, not because they're worried about Joe Biden's health. Everybody who works at the White House already knows he's so thoroughly unwell he can barely speak. These are the people who run his teleprompter. They're the ones who put the little pieces of tape on the floor so he knows where the door is. These are not people who have any illusions at all about Joe Biden's condition. What they're upset about is the fact that Joe Biden just stepped on their message. And from day one, that message has been consistent and unrelenting. Get the vax or else. Get the vax, you can't have a job, or an organ transplant, or Thanksgiving with your kids. Get the vax, you can't visit your mom as she dies in the hospital. Get the vax, troll. It's the most important thing that you can do, and you're a monster if you don't. So people obeyed. They did it. Okay, they said, we'll take the vax. Doesn't look like we have a choice. But are you sure it works? It's pretty hard to make a successful vaccine against a coronavirus. In fact, nobody's ever done it. We tried with SARS almost 20 years ago, and that failed completely. So are you absolutely positive this stuff works? Are you sure it's safe and effective? Of course we're positive, screamed the mannequin. We're the U.S. government. We know these things. We don't make mistakes. Stop asking questions. Questions have no place in science. Just take this shot and you will not get COVID. That's guaranteed. Joe Biden said that. He didn't just say it once. He said it many, many, many times.
The fact is, this has been a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Unvaccinated. The Delta virus, which is much more transmissible and more deadly in terms of unvaccinated people, the various shots that people are getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. If you're unvaccinated, you have some reason to be alarmed. Many of you will, you'll experience severe illness in many cases if you get COVID-19 if you're not vaccinated. Some will die. We have in hand all the vaccines we need to get every American fully vaccinated, including the booster shot. There's no excuse for anyone being unvaccinated. This continues to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Yeah, there's no excuse. And if you don't get the vax, you're going to die from COVID. You're going to get COVID if you don't get the vax. Now, if he had said that once or maybe like 11 times, you could say he's got dementia or whatever. He said it pretty much every day. He's not the only one. They all did, beginning with Lord Fauci.
For yet again another boost, in this case, a fourth dose boost for an individual receiving the mRNA. And then the issue of vaccines actually, at least with regard to SARS-CoV-2, can do better than nature. When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
So it turns out once you get vaccinated, you can feel safe. You're not going to get infected. You're not like the dirty people who didn't get the vax, the anti-science people who are all going to die. And when they do, we're going to laugh at them because they deserve it. And by the way, it wasn't just Biden who was just reading the script. It wasn't just Fauci who will say whatever it takes and is, of course, covering up his own role in creating the virus in the first place. Even actual doctors, even the head of the CDC, even Rochelle Walensky herself said the same thing.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real-world data.
Yeah, it's not just in the clinical trials, it's in real-world data. Just look around, observed reality. You don't know anyone who's gotten the vax and then got oh, wait, everybody who got the vax got COVID. How does that work? Well, they never explained. They stopped telling you it was a pandemic of the unvaccinated because that was so obviously untrue. You got the vax and you still got COVID. So they stopped saying anything at all, and they hoped you would forget about what they said for a full year and all the thousands of people whose lives they destroyed on the basis of that lie. But what they didn't do ever was apologize for it. They hoped they wouldn't have to. Then last Friday, Joe Biden, again, the president of the United States, became visibly symptomatic with something during a speech in Jerusalem. Watch.
I was making a speech, and I had a terrible headache.
That whole story. Joe Biden and a whole lot of other people got pretty sick with COVID after getting multiple shots. What is that about exactly? How did that happen? It's easy to just mock that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. That's clearly untrue. But is there a connection between getting multiple COVID vac shots and getting sicker? Is it possible that the vaccine actually can hurt you, especially if you keep getting boosted? Can it weaken your immune system? Well, that looks possible. Multiple studies have looked into this. Just last month, the Journal of Food and Chemical Toxicology published the findings of several mRNA researchers, and we're quoting. In this paper, we present evidence that vaccination induces a profound impairment in type 1 interferon signaling, which has diverse adverse consequences to human health. Well, that seems like a headline. Did you read that in the New York Times? No, you probably didn't. Kind of weird, since hundreds of millions of people got the shot. The researchers continued that in their studies of the COVID vaccine, quote, we identified potential profound disturbances in regulatory control of protein synthesis and cancer surveillance. These disturbances potentially have a causal link to neurodegenerative disease, myocarditis, Bell's palsy, liver disease, impaired adaptive immunity, impaired DNA damage response, etc. So it's possible, in fact, it's looking likely that the vaccine might suppress the immune system.
Wow.
This fact, the authors concluded, will, quote, have a wide range of consequences, not the least of which include the reactivation of latent viral infections and the reduced ability to effectively combat future infections, end quote. Now, again, we sincerely hope that's not true. But it's not just the conclusion of one scientific journal. The Lancet, maybe the most famous scientific journal in the world, released similar findings in February.
In the world!
Quote, risk of infection, hospitalization, and death up to 9 months after a second dose of COVID-19 vaccine. A physician called Kenji Yamamoto made this observation about the data from the Lancet. He wrote this in a letter to the Journal of Virology. We're quoting. The study showed that immune function among vaccinated individuals 8 months after the administration of 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccine was lower than that among the unvaccinated individuals. Now, your first response, if you're a humane person, to a line like that has got to be deep sympathy.
Yes.
Because people were misled. They were forced.
Yes.
They were forced.
I agree.
Medical ethics thrown out the window. People were forced to take medicine they didn't want. Some of them may have been hurt by it. And you don't have to take this man's word for it. Pull up the Lancet study yourself. You won't find anything of the text of the article saying what Kenji Yamamoto said, which is weird. Why would the Lancet want to hide a major finding like that? We can't say. But if you look at table 3 in the piece, here's what you'll find buried in the data. Among people around the age of 80 who've been double vaccinated, that would include people like Joe Biden, the per capita rate of medical incidences, including hospitalizations or death, is nearly twice as high as the rate of serious incidents for the unvaccinated. This is 180 days after vaccination. What is that? And why is no one interested?
I don't know.
The piece also includes a chart showing negative vaccine efficacy for all ages after 8 months for all participants in the study. So, again, this is sad news for a lot of Americans.
Wow.
But it's also a profound indictment, maybe the greatest indictment in our lifetimes of our leaders. Their recklessness, their pig-headedness, their dishonesty. Given this, how is the DC government, among many others, still requiring school children, public and private school children, to get a COVID vaccine? That's a question that no one asked at today's White House press briefing. How are members of the U.S. military being dismissed without their pensions because they won't take this same vaccine in light of these study results?
Gotta wonder.
Is no one paying attention? It's the ominous fact, and that is a lot of people have been hurt by this. You hate to say it. Germany's Ministry of Health found that 1 in 5,000 Germans have suffered, quote, serious side effects after a COVID-19 vaccine. Now, 1 in 5,000 may seem like a lot or a little, but extrapolate forward to the United States, a country with our population. That would mean that in the U.S., if that number holds constant across countries, and why wouldn't it, it would mean more than 100,000 Americans may have been seriously injured by the COVID vaccine. Why does no one talk about them? Why does nobody care? And what happens to them now? If Joe Biden accomplishes a single thing as president, he'll be getting more people to ask that question today. And it's a fair question. And to end, science is about questions. Science is questioning. So anyone who tells you you're anti-science for asking a question doesn't understand what science is.
There really isn't much damage or burning on the scene. They made it sound so much worse.
This lady tries to fucking escape this gurney.
Watch her again. No burn marks on body,
Look,
face,
here
or
she
hair.
comes. Look,
She's clearly trying
look.
to escape.
That is not a dead woman.
Just in case you missed it first time.
There's a civil war I've warned you about several thousand fucking times that I was told about by a senator in 2014. I've shown you where the crops have died for several years now here in the Corn Belt from here to China. And if we had any corn, they'd be feeding it to the cows. But we don't. Seems somebody's missing a foot. Putin on the brink because he's losing the war over here. You know, Russia's so huge, or wait a minute, Ukraine's so huge, it's influencing the flow of food. Oh yeah, no, probably not. But this guy's going to nuke you. I was told about that in 2014 also, with China and North Korea. Funny how that's all up in the news, isn't it? Almost like it's coming. Because the people on the border have fentanyl, right? No, they're running from the fires we've been watching for 3 months that have burned down their homes, and for a couple months now down in Mexico, in a lot of the major cities, the taps have been shut off. There is no water. They're thirsty. There you go. War in Ukraine and South China Sea. It's indicating Melina doesn't like Trump very much. Oh yeah, and the globe is still on fire, Lee. It hasn't ended, jackass.
Human feces. Meanwhile, one controversial study even found apparent evidence that other hominids, ancient ancestors of Homo sapiens, may have lived in what's now California as much as 130,000 years ago. However, the ghost tracks in New Mexico remain incredibly important, as they seemingly show clear, tangible evidence that humans were present at a much earlier time. The Bering Land Bridge.
In other news, not hotspots, the globe is actually on fire, and it keeps spreading more and more, regardless of what some channels tell you. And as the brakes keep tapping, you can check your alarm clock or your stove clock, whichever one's not hooked up to the world clock, and it's varying in time by minutes, sometimes a day. The big waves are gathering up on the west coast continually, and smaller on the east coast of the globe as we burn. Not to mention the fucking volcanoes and the shaking that is escalating, and your Schumann that's spiking because your ionosphere is being compressed by huge planets behind you that you can see at night on your north horizon. Go point north and open your eyes. There they are. These are magnetospheres behind you, definitively, but scientifically. Whatever, they're there. Go verifiably look in your night sky. Boom, you'll see them. They're huge, big shadows in the shadow of Earth that have been sneaking up on us for almost 3 years. We have been monitoring this daily. This isn't something we just stumbled upon. This is reality. Go look.